The mitochondrial Eve, the most recent woman from whom all living humans on this earth have descended. Can you imagine? All the 7 billion people on this planet have descended from this woman. Imagine your her mother, her mother's mother, going on converging to one woman. We found her and we named her the mitochondrial Eve. So, who is really this elusive mitochondrial Eve? We'll delve into that into today's episode of Bite Sized Concepts. So, before we discuss the mitochondrial Eve, let's delve into the mitochondria itself to, jog our memory. Many of you must be remembering from your science classes that the mitochondrion is a membrane-bound organelle found in the cytoplasm of almost all eukaryotic cells, or the complex type cells that make us up. So, the mitochondrion is typically round or rod-shaped, and it is double membranous, which is unusual. And it has an inner membrane and an outer membrane. And what is so amazing is that its inner membrane is folded into finger-like projections, as you can see over here, called cristae. So let me just write that down. That's a cristae. Right. So the cristae contains a fluid which contains all of the cellular components of the mitochondria. So you have granules, you have F0, F1 particles, you have the ribosomes, you have a DNA, you have enzymes like ATP synthase. So basically, what is the role of a mitochondria in a cell? So a mitochondria is called the powerhouse of the cell, and it helps produce energy for the cell by using glucose in a process that we all remember is respiration. And it produces ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. Let me just write that down here. ATP. And this adenosine triphosphate, it is a high energy storing chemical compound which has an adenosine. Just going to represent that as A over here, and 3 phosphate bonds. Now these bonds store a lot of energy, and this energy which is stored in ATP is stored in the form of chemical energy. Let me just write that down here. Chemical energy. So when it breaks a bond, usually this one breaks. So we write that ATP, it becomes ADP, or adenosine diphosphate, because it has 2 phosphate bonds. So we have ADP, and we're left with the P, which we represent as PI, or inorganic phosphate group. And the inorganic phosphate group and ADP formation from ATP releases a lot of energy, which I'm going to represent by the delta over here. So that's basically the mitochondria in a nutshell. But what really makes this mitochondria special and a suitable candidate for finding the mitochondrial Eve is that a mitochondria is a semi-autonomous body. Let me tell you a little story here. Long back, when life had just begun and cells had just formed, there was a hunter cell. A hunter cell which ate up a smaller cell. Both were prokaryotic. So this smaller cell, instead of getting digested, decided to work with the hunter cell. Both of them showed exemplary teamwork. The hunter cell would bring food for itself and the smaller cell, and the smaller cell in turn would turn that food into energy for the hunter cell. Yes, that's right. The story I just told you is the mitochondrion. The story of how it came into being, how eukaryotic cells came into being. And the small cell swallowed up by the hunter cell was the mitochondria. This is a theory for why it's a semi-autonomous body. Anyway, so the mitochondria has its own DNA, circular DNA, which is different from the DNA that we find in the nucleus. It has 16,500 base pairs or so, and it encodes proteins which are specifically mitochondrial. However, what really makes these mitochondrial body so special is that we inherit our mitochondria only from our mothers. Yes, that's right. We get mitochondria only from our mothers. We can't get it from our fathers. So that's why it's a wonderful candidate for the mitochondrial Eve. So who was really the mitochondrial Eve? Let's delve into it. Forand was here. Afrikaans for Eve was here. Now that might give you a little clue of who the mitochondrial Eve really was and where she came from. She came from southern Africa. And today it's a desert. 200,000 years ago, it may have been a home to her. She came from Africa's Kalahari Desert. Scientists and scientist teams have pieced together one of the oldest DNA lineages on the earth, a collection of genes called ELO, which is passed maternally through mitochondria and has survived remarkably unchanged in some populations for hundreds of thousands of years. By tracking where and when the L0 lineage first split into slightly different sublineages that are still observed in many indigenous African populations, we can tell who the mitochondrial Eve really was. And even though this has some researchers skeptical, many agree that she came from the Kalahari Desert and she lived about 200,000 years ago. So, there you have it. She was our mitochondrial Eve, and from her we got our mitochondria. And we have a lot to be thankful for to her. She gave us our mitochondria, which gave us the ability to respire, to create energy from glucose, from the food we eat. So, thank you, mitochondrial Eve. And that is the end of today's bite-sized concept episode. I hope you enjoy it. Now, please press the subscribe icon, drop in some comments for how we can make our videos better, and like our video. Thank you.